Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Welcome to the live, Dr. Ziffy.
Um, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me too?
Yes, it seems to be a bit faint, but that's okay. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks for joining. You know, the the internet world has been a bit wonky over the last couple of days, but hopefully it should. Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to read a short bio of Dr. Ziffy. I think I'm seeing about 6 people on. So we'll be starting in the next 3-4 minutes, right? And while we're waiting for others to join, just going to read a short bio of who Dr. Ziffy is. I mean, I'm impressed by a portfolio, right? So I'm just going to um, read something very short. So Dr. Ziffy is a dynamic professional with an amazing career spanning over 3 decades, right? Maybe way before I was actually born. uh, so Dr. Ziffy has a solid foundation in the oil and gas industry, where she spent over 20 years at Chevron Nigeria Limited. Dr. Ziffy has demonstrated remarkable um, versatility. Versatility, is that correct? Versatility, whatever that word is, right? In various roles, our journey took a significant turn as she transitioned from the realm of addressing um, unique needs and advocating for the differently enabled community. As a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA, and qualified behavior analyst, QBA, Dr. Ziffy has dedicated the past decade to making an impact in the field of applied behavior analysis. Um, Our passion lies in utilizing the principles of ABA to enhance the lives of individuals, particularly children between 0 to 18 years, who have a little bit of difficulty with neurodevelopmental disability, like intellectual and developmental disability, and also autism spectrum disabilities. So yeah, that is what Dr. Ziffy is. Um, So yes, so we'll just go straight into today's session. So basically, we're here today to you know get an understanding of what autism is really, right? And so we actually had people to drop questions, right? So I think I have about 2-3 questions here, and I'm hoping that more people would actually drop questions in the comment section as we proceed, right? But I'm just going to, let also Dr. Ziffy introduce herself, right? And also why, the Shades of Life Foundation is, yeah, why, she actually started the Shades of Life Foundation, right? And I'm just going to go on to read a couple of questions that we got, right? And I mean, she can also like take it from there, right? Is that good, Dr. Ziffy?
Yes, that's fine.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. So let's get started.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Glad to be here. So Mr. Jagede has done all the work of introducing me. I think the other aspect that I would say is touch on is that I'm a mother and a professional, so I wear 2 hats. Okay, and it's a combination of both that led to the founding of the foundation. So the foundation, like he mentioned, caters to both assessment, diagnosis, and intervention for individuals with autism. I hope everybody can hear properly. I seem to be
Yes.
getting some kind of feedback crackling. Okay. So, um, yeah, that's why the foundation was started, to provide the support to those who are not able to either financially or emotionally or in some way offer service to their children, either by way of assessing them or having diagnosis done, or they've probably gotten an assessment done or a diagnosis of either autism, intellectual disability, and they do not have the resources to provide service or intervention for them. Because right now we in the country, everything is done out of pocket, and it can be quite challenging because to get good service or expert service doesn't come cheap. And so that's a bit about the foundation. Mr. Jagger also said something about what autism is. So what is autism? People keep asking that question, and you would have thought that by now, due to social media or more information, that people would kind of have understood what it is. But by and large, not yet. So, as briefly as I can, I would say that, or as without going into too much technicalities, autism is just a neurodevelopmental disorder. And simply put, it just stems from the brain. So the brain being wired differently. And I would want to say that there's nothing wrong with the brain being wired differently, okay? But to understand autistics or people on the spectrum, we just need to understand that their brains are wired differently. And because of that, the way they process information that everybody has access to is different. Okay? So that's just what autism is in a nutshell. But to be more technical, there are things that you look out for, such as there's an impact on their social communication ability and social interaction. So anything that has to do with social skills, there's a bit of impact on it for some of them. For some of them, it may be the communication side. So either they're not vocalizing, meaning they're not using their words, or they're probably using their words, but the way they use words may sometimes not be functional. So when we say functional, it means that they do have vocabulary, but it doesn't convey the meaning as intended at any given point in time. So, for instance, there's a gentleman, an adult, who recently used the word. The word means expire. So he was referring to some inanimate object. It was door locks, and he was saying to his boss that the lock is obsolete. And so the boss, and this is an adult man, saying the lock was obsolete at a meeting. So he knows the word obsolete, but in that context, it wasn't serving the purpose. So that's what we mean by functional. Obsolete just means it's expired, right? So things like that. So sometimes their use of words or language does not quite serve the purpose as intended. We have the other aspect of autism that has to do with their repetitive and restricted behaviors. So repetitive, as it means, is that they probably want to do one singular thing, either an activity, maybe watch a movie or go somewhere or wear some clothing over and over again, just that one item. They're just fixated on a particular item. So the range of interest isn't wide. So maybe I may be interested in football, basketball, swimming, and all of that. But they are just interested in one particular item. Now, this is different from just liking or excelling in one sport. Okay. Most of us neurotypicals, as we call ourselves, would pick interest and want to experiment with different things. But they are not really willing to experiment a whole lot. So that's where that restricted response or behavior comes in. Or they may just, so like let's say if it's a child, you give them an object to play with, a toy. They may not play with that toy as designed in a functional way. So let's say you give them a bucket and a shovel or a bowl, and you want them to scoop sand or water into it. They may not do that. What could happen is that they may put the spade or the shovel or bowl aside, turn the bucket upside down, and just leave it there, or spin the bucket or do something else other than what that the purpose for the bucket is. So that's what we mean by non-functional play. Or they may be preoccupied with other things. So for instance, if it's a girl and you gave them a doll to play with, for instance, dress up the doll, comb the hair, they may not do that. Instead, they may just hold on to the doll and either spin it or just look at it or keep flicking the eyes up and down, or they just pick a specific interest in a specific part of that doll rather than playing with the whole doll. Same thing for boys. You may give them cars or toy soldiers or something. So rather than using that toy as designed for and engaging appropriately, they're just going to pick interest in one aspect. So that's the restricted element in their play or behavior. And it's not just about children, adults as well, because we've gotten adults very recently and people that were missed in their early years. So what tends to happen is that when those people that are on the spectrum can speak, remember I said at the beginning, some may have some delayed speech, but for those of them that can actually speak, they get missed because they are talking, they may not be as elaborate with their sentences or their communication skills as most typical people, but they are speaking. And so they get missed. And what tends to happen is that this goes on for a while. And by the time they're adults or people take notice, it may be a bit late for them. But what tends to happen is that their area of interest, what they're discussing, the conversations are very limited. So they may just focus on one player out of 11 on a football team, or they're just fixated with a particular club or something. So there are different presentations across the spectrum, is the point here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. So we actually got a question, and
Yeah.
it's pretty funny. um, so I think I've actually answered the first part, and there's something I actually want you to clear. So the person asked, so what exactly is autism, and how do people get infected? Right. So I think you already explained the first part of what exactly autism is, but I want you to also talk about the other part, which is how people get infected, because I know that they don't get infected, right? So I wanted to clear that up.
That I see why you say that's a bit. It's not. So when you talk of infected, we're referring to diseases. Okay, so maybe a cough or something that you can transfer to somebody else. So with autism, there's no infection as it is. It's just something that's in the person's DNA. Studies have shown us that there's a bit of genetic content in it. Okay, so the DNA, how is the person wired? So it's not something that people just, it's not contagious. You see, in fact, most times when people are autistic, you don't even know. That's why we say it's a hidden disability. There's no look to autism. Okay, so it's not infectious, basically, is the bottom line. I think I've lost your audio.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry about that. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so there's a question.
What are
What
what
are
are
some of the
some early signs of autism and intellectual disability? Okay, so when you talk of early signs, we're looking at early years from age 0 to 12, or even up to 18 months, 12 months, 0 to 12 months, or 18. Within that time frame, there are milestones that children would typically meet. Some of them are like eye contact, responding to their name, responding to external stimuli such as sounds, um, lights, all those things that move, tracking objects. So when we don't see that, so let's say I have Coyote here and I call Coyote, and he's not turning, he's not responding, and we've done all sorts of tests and we see there's nothing wrong with the hearing, then that's a red flag, what we call red flags. Responding to name is different from, sometimes people tell you, oh, Coyote, come, and the person goes. So responding to name should occur without the verb, okay? And once somebody isn't responding without the verb, just pure name, Ada, and they turn, then that's one of the flags, okay? Sometimes they're also sensitive to other stimuli, like I said, light, sound. They may hear a loud noise or something and they're covering their ears and going away. But usually the red flags, the major red flags, are not responding to name, no social interaction, peer-to-peer interaction. They may just play in isolation, or like I said, the eye contact. Those are immediate red flags. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we got a question about around. So let me just read it out. So what are some of the common challenges by families raising children with autism? Some challenges faced by
Okay.
faced by families.
Okay. And also catch the one in the chat before it goes away.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there are two there. So challenges really are around stigmatization. What people don't know, they tend to be afraid of. Okay? So that's stigmatization. So you can imagine a family with an autistic child who people don't understand. So the people that, let's say, an autistic child that really needs a lot of support. So the person is tantruming because they can't speak. It's a source of embarrassment. So people will tend to look at them like, what's going on here? Bad parenting. And when they even know, the family then gets to know what's really wrong, where the resources, there's no help in terms of government support. And if you then decide to go get intervention, one of the proven ways or major thing is applied behavior analysis. Okay? Now, ABA is not cheap to get that service, especially in Nigeria, at least where I am. And when you go outside where there's government support or insurance, you're going to be on a queue, very long queue, to gain access. So the greatest thing is having the right professionals, people understanding what it is that you're dealing with, having respite, and then the finance to provide the intervention that that child needs. Okay, how do we reduce stigma? for autism and intellectual disabilities, I believe, is by speaking about it. Like I was speaking a lot about my child, and that's how some other people got to know what was going on with their own children. I constantly talk about these things. Okay. So the more we educate people, so for all of us that have tuned in, for instance, after hearing this, and you see the next person who, um, you know, may be displaying some signs of being on a spectrum or having intellectual disability, and we don't shy away from that person, but be more empathetic, then we're going to be contributing to the reduction of stigma. Again, when people don't understand something, they tend to be afraid of it, and that's where stigma comes from. So the more knowledge we have, the more we equip ourselves and build ourselves up with information, then the less, because we then become more understanding. Okay. What role do genetics play in the development of autism and intellectual disabilities? So for autism, the studies have shown us there are over 300 genes. Now that's why it's a spectrum. It's called autism spectrum disorder. One person with autism is just that one person until you see the next individual. So the way the DNA is configured for person A will be different from B. And so there's that bit. I'm one of the people, the school of thought that believes there's a big, fair amount of genetics involved. For intellectual disabilities, the same thing. However, because intellectual disability is a little bit different from autism in the sense that it would involve adaptive skills, your ability to take care of yourself, and the cognitive part, the IQ, and the age of onset. A lot of people would unconsciously make their children intellectually disabled, because if you don't let the person acquire relevant life skills, taking care of themselves, doing chores, and all those sort of things, they then don't work the muscles. I'm not talking of playing video games, that's relaxation. But if they don't know how to wash a plate, they don't know how to buy stuff, all of those things, you inadvertently are walking towards intellectual disability. But yes, there is some, if you're looking at the cognitive aspect, there could be some genetic component in both autism and intellectual disability. I think there was do government fund research for things like autism? I'm not very sure about that, but we're working on. I mean, if you have any government contacts, we'll be glad to explore, because I really, really am hot on research, especially on for Nigeria. Making things culturally relevant, bringing a lot of these things to the fore. But right now, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure that the government has funded any, at least to the best of my knowledge. No idea on that. How much does it cost to treat people with autism? So I personally don't like the word treat. And the reason is, when we say treat, it tends to mean that it would go away. Okay, so maybe get some pills or do something and the autism goes away. So in that regard, you can't treat, but you can provide intervention both for people with autism and intellectual disabilities. And in doing so, the aim is to make them more independent. So if I again use my daughter as an example, who was not speaking, she didn't have words, and she had other behaviors, with intervention, she's now speaking and doing other things. She's cooking, living a fairly independent life. So that's what we prefer to say intervention. Now, the cost is enormous. For you to get, so for instance, if you were going to get a proper diagnosis, screening, assessment, diagnosis, if you're outside of the country, you should be looking at something around £1,000 just for an ordinary, what do you call it, diagnosis. Okay. However, the cost varies in Nigeria, depending, but I do know that it would cost an average of about 300,000 per month to provide intervention. And that's for the person to have about 2 hours every day. So we're talking of getting a 40-hour per month intervention. Okay. The other aspect could be to then train the caregivers, either the parents or whoever is vested in that child or individual, to provide the intervention under supervision. So that may lessen the burden. And because autism and intellectual disability, they are lifelong disorders. My daughter is almost 23 and the autism has not gone away. You can see that paying that money on a monthly basis, at least in the early years, to have access to intervention is a lot. And so that's one of the things that